again, my name's Elizabeth and I like to sew smart, and I'm sewing smart for Christmas today. I'm going to make a little Christmas bed runner for your bed, for myself, and for those of you who haven't got much space to make a big quilt. And I'm using a pleated border technique, which is really easy to do and comes out very effectively. And if you stay and watch till right through to the end of the video, you will find a little extra treat on the end that you can make with your scraps. So we begin with block number 1, which is our center block. It's a 12.5 inch square of a pale background. Now I have already ironed my applique on because it's much easier for you to see. They're all scrap. This is left over from another block I've done, so this is what we're going to do. You need the pattern for the 3 baubles. You'll need some gold for the strings that hold the baubles, and the leaves of the tree, they are on the pattern. When you cut them, this will be on the wrong side because you're going to flip it over to make this, and it will just flip over and be the right way round. So this is the branches of your Christmas tree. These are the baubles and these are the strings that hold them. I'm going to applique them on. Now you can use a buttonhole stitch, but I use a small zigzag, mainly because this is going to be on the bottom of a bed, and when you have a little bit of wear on it, you don't want these edges to come adrift. So I'm now going to applique all of these on, starting with the strings, then I will do the leaves, and last of all I will make a complete circle around the Christmas baubles. So here's my completed block number 1. I've appliqued around each one. Be very careful when you get just to the tips of the leaves on the tree, and you'll find an easy way to do that as you get better as you're going along. So that now is a 12.5 inch square. That is block number 1, and next I'll show you how to make block number 2. Now for block 2 we have 4 6.5 inch squares, but you only need, as for the other blocks, you only need 2 different fabrics. You need a darker fabric and a lighter contrast fabric. On the pattern there is, on the templates are ready for you to cut out, so you will need 2 of the dark and you will need 2 of the contrast. You'll need 4 6.5 inch squares, 2 of the light, the contrast, and 2 of the dark one. And I have already ironed my templates on purely because I'm using fabric from my stash, and when I came to cut these I was limited to the amount of fabric I had, and I wanted to get the 2 6.5 inch squares out, so I've actually added smaller pieces on the end, but you will see on the pattern it is one complete thing. So if you've got enough fabric to cut the whole thing out, then that's what you do. So I've ironed them on. All it means for block 2 is I'm now going to applique each one on, and then I will flip them over, put a 1/4 inch seam, and then join this to this section, and that will be block 2 finished. So I'm now going to take these to the machine and stitch them on with an applique stitch. I've put my square onto some baking parchment because that enables it to slide around a bit easier, and I'm starting in the middle because I don't want my end threads, my start and finish, to be on the outside of this applique. I think it's always neater if you can finish somewhere in the middle. I've chosen a small zigzag stitch, and all I'm going to do is, following my line all the way around, I'm just going to just stick onto the edge of that applique, take your time with it, and all the way around. Right to the end. Now it leaves a nice finish. If you've got any threads or anything, you can snip them off after, but I think that's a really good stitch to put on here. It makes it nice and secure, and because it's a bed runner, you might have a little bit of wear on the top of it, so you really need to keep your applique secure. I've appliqued all my pieces on each of the 4 squares, and I just must remind you, it pays to get them as central as possible and get the diagonal correct so that you've got the points pointing into the corner. Excuse me. And all I've got to do now, I've appliqued them on, is I'm just going to turn them over. Actually, because I'm right-handed, I will turn that the other way. Put those 2 edges together. I will pin that, and I will pin it at the top edge as well. And I just like to mention at this point, I don't know if any of you have seen these pins, but these pins have got a little blue top on. You can iron over these pins and they don't melt, they don't stick to the iron, nothing. They are really, I think they're called magic pins, but they're really, really good. So if any of you need to know where to get them, if you contact me, I will tell you. So I've pinned those 2 together. It's going to be a 1/4 inch seam sewing down here. Same with this one, 1/4 inch seam down there, and then I will sew the top to the bottom. I ironed my seams to the dark side so that when I came to join them, one went that way, the other went that way, makes it less bulky. And then when I've joined the top to the bottom, I've actually pressed this seam open. Now it is a matter of preference, but I think it makes it less bulky when you come to quilt. And there, everything looks nice, all nicely together, meets nicely in the middle. So that is block number 2 now completed. For block number 3, and again there is a template in the pattern for this, I've chosen a red Christmas and a gold Christmas out of my scrap Christmas fabrics. Try and keep your scraps, keep these cut out of your scraps, because you don't really want to go and buy new Christmas fabric. Now for this, 1 10-inch square of the gold, 1 10-inch square of the red. Now when you cut them diagonally in half, which you will do, you'll be left with half, which a triangle. So the red half, you will cut the piece of applique out of the red, and the gold, you'll cut the gold out. And then of course you will apply them to the dark to the paler, and the paler to the dark. We will add some borders, but they are going to be scrap as well, and these are slightly too wide, but they were already in my stash and they were pre-cut. Now when you put your applique on, you want it to be right across the corner halfway. So here's a scrap piece I had, that's something else I've used. How I did it was I've folded it in half. You can see that perhaps. I folded it in half and I pressed the applique piece in half as well, so that when I put the applique piece on, the crease goes right out halfway along the triangle. That way you're sure that you're going to get them lining up and they'll be absolutely even into the corners. So what I'll do now is I will again go to the machine and I will applique my pieces on, and then I'll come back and we'll line them up and join the center square together. I've appliqued both of the pieces on. My next move is to put them over. Now you need those 2 pieces to be lined up, so when you turn over, do it this way so you can perhaps see it a little bit better with the red. You need to line up your stitch lines right in the middle and pin them. Now you're going to sew using a 1/4 inch seam again across this diagonal. Now treat it gently because it is on the cross and it may have a little bit of give in it. When I stitched my diagonal line across, I actually did take it more generously than the 1/4 inch. The 1/4 inch comes to about there. I've gone closer to 1/2 inch. The reason for that is because when I've cut my pieces out, these are roughly 1 inch apart, and so I wanted where the join is, I wanted that to be roughly the inch apart as well. So this was originally a floral pattern, so I've made it just a bit closer so that it looks better and more even. That means my square has turned out at 9¼ inches now instead of 9½. So I've cut my top piece, which is opposite to this, and the bottom piece opposite again to 9¼ inches, and I'm going to now pin those and stitch them on with a 1/4 inch seam. I've pinned and sewn my top border on, 1/4 inch seam, as you should see. Pressed it flat, pressed it to the outside, and to do the side panels I have stitched a square, a 2½ inch square onto this 2½ inch strip I've got. Remember, yours probably will be smaller because I'm using strips that I had already cut from my stash. So all I've done is pinned that, made a stitch line. I am going to line it up with that, flip it over, pin it, sew a 1/4 inch down here. I will measure it first and trim this piece off so I'm sure I get the same length. I'll repeat it in reverse because this corner has the gold square on, this corner is going to have the red square on. So I'll just make sure the red square is on this end and not on that end. So I'll pin that and sew it 1/4 inch down there, and then all I'll have to do then is trim it back to 12½ inches square, and then it will match block 2 that we did earlier. I've stitched on my side panel there with a little square at the top and the red square at the bottom, so there's red and red and gold and gold, but these corners I've left plain, and I think that's a really nice square made from scrap. So again, try and find all your scraps. You only need 2 colours, but it all looks very good just with 2 colours. So now we have block 2 and block 3, and I think that they're really nice. They won't be sitting close together, but I think that's really nice. And make sure when you cut your square back that you can put your 12½ inch square ruler on and it fits perfectly. This is block number 4, and it consists of a 6½ inch block in the middle and 3½ inch squares all the way around, and when they're all put together they make a 12½ inch block again, just the same as the first 3 we did. For block number 4 that you just saw, you will need one 6½ inch square of the dark fabric, you will need a 3 inch square of the pale fabric, and then a 2¼ inch square which I've put on adhesive webbing to go on the back here to make it look like it's on point and stitched, but it's not actually going to be stitched, it's actually going to be appliqued all the way around. That means less bulk for your seams. You will also need 4 3½ inch squares of the pale fabric, 4 of the pale fabric 4 inch squares, and 4 of the dark fabric also 4 inch squares. Now these 4 inch squares are going to be put together, right sides together. We are going to draw a diagonal line right across from corner to corner, and then another line 1/4 inch out on both sides of that line, because those outside lines are going to be our stitch lines, because when we stitch them together we will cut this center line, and then that is what forms your star points. So I've got one here that's just done, so I can show you. These will go on each corner, and then the point of the star will go on like that. So that is 1 4 inch dark and 1 4 inch paler, and we'll make enough to go all the way around out of those 4 we've cut. So I'll just go over this again. To get that 2 triangle square there, the 3½ inch square, we've put right sides together. I've drawn the line down the middle diagonally, a 1/4 inch line outside of that on both sides. I've machined down this outside line. I'm now going to just cut this diagonally, comes into 2 triangles. So I'm now going to press this. Now do remember, press to the dark side. Press that seam with a nice warm iron, then you will end up with this, and to excuse me, to this way around, sorry, so you can see, you will need that line, the diagonal line, on your 6.5 inch ruler. So line that diagonal up. You will see there's the 3.5 inch line, there's the 3.5 inch line. You're going to trim this off, keeping that diagonal line to 3.5 inches square, just the same size as the ones you have for the corner. So my triangles are all done and they're all in place. You can see that forms a nice star. Before I stitch my rows together, I'm going to put some stabilizer underneath this center square and just applique using a small zigzag stitch around the pale piece and then around the dark green piece. That will give me my center point without having to do any sew any more squares on. So then when I've done that, I will just pin my rows together. Now be very careful when you pin, because you must have a 1/4 inch seam all the way along. 1/4 inch. If it helps you, you could draw a 1/4 inch line down on your fabric, but you must have that because you've got to end up with 12.5 inch squares. So the best way to sew this is sew your top row together, as I said before, 1/4 inch seam, and that will come out exactly at 12.5 inches across. Then you have to sew these two together and then onto the center one, because you need that to line up with that one, which it does. And again, repeat as you did for the top with the bottom row. So I'm now going to pin and sew these two together, that one there, and then that will be our square complete. I've stitched my top row on and my bottom row on, and I now can measure that with my 12.5 inch square ruler, and that's a perfect 12.5 inch square. I would just say that I use an acrylic stick, 1/4 inch stick. If you notice there's a 1/4 inch seam there and there, make sure that you've got that, because when you come to put your bed runner together, you must have a 1/4 inch so that you don't cut off your points on your star. So that's finished, and now it's on to block number 5, which is our last block. So for block number 5, you will need 2 7-inch squares of the pale background and 2 6-inch squares of the pale background and 2 6-inch squares of the print. But I have, because this is going to, I don't know if you can see this, I hope you can, I'll try to photograph it on here. This was very plain at the corner, so I'm fussy cutting some little trees from my fabric. It's got a tree on, I'm just fussy cutting that, and I'm going to put one on each corner. So what I've done is I have drawn a diagonal line on my 7-inch squares and cut them diagonally in half, and then I have just ironed on with the fusible webbing the fussy cut trees, one on each corner, so it will end up one tree on each corner. There will be 4 of those. For the center squares, I'm going to make the windmill effect. It's a pinwheel, and all I will do is I'll put a pale piece. Now this is slightly too big. These squares are slightly too big because we're going to cut them back. I'm going to draw a diagonal line. Just try and even that up very slightly. I'm going to draw a diagonal line from corner to corner with an iron-off pen, and then I'm going to draw another line 1/4 inch out from that, just like we did in the previous block. that is going to be my stitch line. And I'm going to draw another line 1/4 inch out from that. So I'm going to stitch down the outer lines, and I'm going to then cut these in half diagonally along the first drawn line, which will make my pinwheels, my triangles. So I will do that on both of those pieces, and then I will come back and show you the next step. I've stitched my triangles down the middle there. If you remember, I've joined them together. Right. So now I've pressed them. Remember to press to the dark side. They were 6-inch squares when I first cut them, but now I have cut them all back to 5.5 inches. My next step, because this is the centerpiece, it will be on point, but this is the very centerpiece. I'm going to pin the top two together, line up the seams. If you can see that, you must line up your seams at the bottom so that they meet perfectly well in the middle. So we'll pin that together. And I'm going to stitch down there. I'm going to repeat that for the bottom two, and then when I've stitched them together I will stitch the top to the bottom. Just a small point as I'm doing this, I've stitched the two top pieces together and the two bottom pieces together, but the importance of leaving the 1/4 inch seam, I'll use this little acrylic stick again so that you can see the 1/4 inch seam there and there. When they're joined together, those 2 points will meet in the center. Line those up. I have openly pressed that because it makes less bulk in the middle. So we make sure that I can pull that back, got a 1/4 inch seam there and a 1/4 inch seam there so that you don't catch the points in the middle. Having stitched my top piece to the bottom piece, I have now cut it back again. It's important that you do this, and on my 9.5 inch square it is exactly now 9 inches square. Now when you can cut this off around here because it doesn't make any difference to your points. You can't cut it off when you've got your points if you had points here, but with this you can, because we're actually now going to put that like so. So it's now 9 inches. Put it there. And I am now going to stitch the 4 corners on after I have appliqued the fussy cut trees onto the corner pieces. And then if we are very, very fortunate, by the time we have our 1/4 inch seams, we will measure 12.5 inches square again. So I'm now going to applique the fussy cut trees on each piece, put stabilizer underneath, and then one by one I've drawn my 1/4 inch line, I will stitch the corners on. Just so that you see, now that I've started to stitch my corners on, if you see this little piece here, that is your 1/4 inch again. So when you put another piece on, you've got to have that so that you don't cut the point here off. So when you come to put the next piece on, I've drawn my 1/4 inch line along there. It will go right up to there, and when you turn that, when you turn that over, your point will be perfect. So I'm now going to put the remaining 3 on, and then that's us practically finished. So I've stitched all my corner sections on, and if you just note, I have got the 1/4 inch seam at the top there, so when I come to put the sashing around these blocks and down the side here, a 1/4 inch, so it won't cut the points off, and it's nice, and it measures exactly 12.5. So that is block number 5, and our next move with this bed runner is to put the sashing on and make the top up and get it ready for the backing and quilting. Now I've completed all 5 blocks. Remember, we're working with fabric, Christmas fabrics that we've got left over that we've taken from our cupboards and our stash. So I have tried to match up my sashing and background fabric with all my fabrics that I've used, but because they're very similar, I have to work out a way of making them stand out and not just melt into the background cloth. So I'm going to put on each one, I'm going to put on a pleated little frame. So there will be a frame there and a frame down there, across there and up there, but that will just take off the similarity between my background fabrics on my blocks and the sashing and background fabric that I've got for the finishing off. So to give you an idea, I'm going to just cut strips of 1.5 inches of the darker fabric of each block. So that's just a 1.5 inch strip. I've ironed them in half, made it nice and sharp, and I'm just going to stitch two 12.5 inch pieces on the top and the bottom, and then I will measure again and put 2 on either side, keeping my blocks at 12.5, that will be. So to give you an idea, I've put gold around this because I've got so many different fabrics on this one. This was the only one that had more than 2 fabrics, so I've chosen the gold there. And when I actually, I've got a piece here, here's a piece, here's a strip. When I have the sashing on, it will come up to there, but you'll have this nice little gold frame in between, which means it takes your vision away from the fact that they are different fabrics, and it brings and blends them all in. So I've got gold and cream in there, I've got gold and cream and white in there, because I've got white on a different one, on the green star I did, I've got a bit of white. So I've tried to incorporate all of those colours in to make it stand out really nicely. So I am a bit short of space because I'm in a temporary sewing room, as you all know. So I'm going to show you how to join your blocks together. You can put them together in any shape or form you want. You don't have to have this as your center block. This is just what I have done. But to do that, remember you've got the fold, excuse me, the fold of this little thing here. So you're going to put the 2.5 inch sashing with the raw edges together, pin. I'll pin it that way, but I would normally pin across, of course, but I'm trying to help you see better. I'm going to pin that there. Now when I turn this over and I've got the seam, I need the right sides of these two to go together, so I'm going to flip this piece over and I will pin that on the right side of the sashing strip, so that when that's stitched together again, they will both be on the right side. This is our 2.5 inch sashing now that we sewed on each block, and I have also added a 4 inch border which I've cut on the top and on the bottom of the runner, and now all I've got left to do now is to quilt it. So what I will do is I will layer it with my wadding and my backing fabric. Now the sashing, top and bottom and in between the blocks, and backing fabric, plus my binding strips which I've cut to self-bind, has taken exactly 2 meters. That's all I have left, this little piece here, from 2 meters. So that gives you an idea of how much that takes. So you can go ahead now and layer it, cut your wadding, cut your backing out and quilt it. I'm going to quilt in the ditch because this lovely little pleat here, you want that to stand out still because that's really elegant. I'm going to stitch in the ditch. This doesn't need an awful lot because it is appliqued on and it has the Visifix underneath. I will probably stipple quilt in the bigger areas on the center block. That might not be your center block, but whatever block you have. And then all I need to do round here on the outsides of the block, finish quilting, put the binding on, and then I'll be back to show it completed. This is our bed runner, all nicely finished. I've self-bound it, and I've used the same fabric that I bound in for the backing. You can use whatever you like or whatever you have. And I have stipple quilted in the pale spaces to help it as well. And it's all nicely finished. I think this is a really good alternative when you haven't got much space but you'd like to have a Christmas bed quilt. So this will look really nice on the foot of your bed for Christmas. So I hope you have fun in making it, and if you've enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up and subscribe, and visit the Etsy shop because all my patterns are in the Etsy shop for all my projects, and I hope to see you next time for another new project. I promised you a little surprise at the end of the video, and this is it. I had a small piece of Christmas fabric left that I really like and didn't want to waste, but I couldn't think about what to put it into because there wasn't enough of it. So I've made, using the same pleated technique, I've made a little wall hanging. It's only a narrow wall hanging. It's 9 inches across, that's all. But I thought that is a good use for scrap fabric that you don't want to get rid of. And using that technique looks really nice, and you can hang that on your wall in a very tiny space. So I hope that you will use the rest of your scraps and make up something like this with them. And the pattern for this is in my Etsy shop as well. So happy sewing, ladies!